It started with a number, or rather the absence of one. The kind of small detail most people overlook until it becomes too quiet to ignore. My savings account, the one I'd built over 6 years of careful work and restraint, showed a balance that didn't make sense. I refreshed the page twice, then a third time. Still wrong, still less, still gone. At first I thought it was a system error. Banks make mistakes, right? But the numbers weren't random. They were familiar. The withdrawal amounts matched a pattern I recognized. Small, strategic deductions over time, each one disguised as something harmless. Rent, utilities, transfers with vague labels. It looked almost routine, almost innocent, but it wasn't. I sat at the kitchen table, the glow of my laptop painting soft light across the room. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something metallic, the tension between disbelief and understanding. I scrolled through the transactions, my eyes catching on one line that made everything stop. The name, the account number it was linked to, my brother's. If you've ever had that moment, the one where trust fractures, not in anger but in disbelief, you'll understand the silence that followed. It wasn't a scream. It was the sound of something small collapsing inside me. I called him immediately. He didn't answer the first time or the second. On the third, his voice came through casual, lazy, as if I'd interrupted nothing more than a nap. "Hey, what's up? Where's my money, Leo?" I said quietly. There was a pause, then a short laugh. "What money?" "The account transfers. They go straight to you. Don't lie." "You're imagining things?" he said. His tone changed, lighter but sharper underneath. "You always overthink. Maybe you forgot some payments." "I track every transaction," I replied. "I have records." "Then prove it," he said. And just like that, he hung up. The words echoed long after the line went dead. Prove it, not denial. Not fear, a challenge. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened every folder, every old email, every document that tied my finances together. He'd always been reckless with money. Late payments, impulsive loans, little debts that he smoothed over with charm and apologies. But I had believed him when he said he was getting better. I had even helped him start again, loaned him small amounts, never asking for them back. That kindness, apparently, had turned into access. By morning, I was at the bank. The teller, a young woman with a sympathetic smile, printed out my transaction logs. "It looks like someone's been making transfers from your linked account," she said, lowering her voice. "Do you share access with anyone?" I hesitated before answering. My brother helped me set up the app a few years ago. I didn't change the credentials after. She nodded, her expression tightening with understanding. "We'll start a review. You'll need to file a formal fraud claim, but if the other account belongs to someone you authorized—" "I didn't authorize him to steal," I interrupted. My voice didn't rise, but it sharpened, slicing the space between us like clean glass. When I left the bank, the world felt colder. Every sound, the traffic, the wind, the dull scrape of shoes on pavement, seemed distant. I'd always believed family could be a safety net. Now it felt more like a trap. At home, I placed the printouts on the table in neat lines, like evidence. I stared at the numbers again, every deduction, every lie. Each one was a footprint of betrayal. The first one had been small, $120, then $300, then more, bolder, confident withdrawals spaced weeks apart. It was theft in slow motion. That evening I called him again. He answered this time, irritation creeping into his tone. "You're still on this? Look, if you think something's wrong, talk to the bank. Don't drag me into it." "I already did," I said. "They're investigating." A pause. "Investigating what?" "You have no proof." "I have enough," I said. "And when I do have proof, you'll hear it too." Loud and clear, he scoffed. "You wouldn't." I smiled to myself, though he couldn't see it. "You'll be on speaker." The call ended. I set the phone down and sat in the dim light of the kitchen again. The air felt different now, not empty, but waiting. I had never been one for revenge, but truth, when delivered cleanly, carries its own kind of justice. That night I began saving every document, every timestamp, every voice note from him that mentioned money. The kind of small, precise preparation that feels like self-defense disguised as patience. I knew what I had to do next. And this time, when I spoke, it wouldn't be a conversation. It would be a reckoning. The next morning, the sky looked washed out. a pale kind of blue that made everything feel temporary. I sat by the kitchen window, my laptop open, bank documents spread across the table. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room, steady and indifferent, as I scrolled through the digital footprints my brother had left behind. It wasn't just about the missing money anymore. It was about the principle of it. The quiet audacity, the certainty that I wouldn't look closely enough to see. I began cataloging every transfer by hand. There was something grounding in writing it out. The dates, the amounts, the memo lines. March 17th, family groceries. April 5th, auto repair. June 2nd, bill payment. Each one perfectly ordinary until you lined them up. The pattern was mathematical, deliberate. He wasn't impulsive. He was systematic. I noticed the first major clue while reviewing screenshots from my banking app. The withdrawals all happened within a 3-hour window every Friday morning, between 8 and 11 a.m. The exact time I was usually in meetings at work. Predictable, exploitable. He knew my routine because I had trusted him with it. By noon, I had already contacted the bank's fraud department again. The woman on the phone, patient but careful, guided me through every verification step. "We'll trace all access logs from your account," she said. "If there's a recurring IP address, we'll find it." "Good," I replied, my voice steady. "I already know where it will lead." I ended the call, feeling the first flicker of power return. Truth, I'd realized, doesn't rush. It collects. It gathers quietly until it's undeniable. That evening I called my mother, partly out of habit, partly because I wanted to hear her tone when his name came up. She sounded distracted, but affectionate, asking about work, about my health, and finally about Leo. "He's been so stressed lately," she said softly. "You two shouldn't fight. You know how sensitive he is." I smiled to myself, unseen. "I'm not fighting, Mom. I'm just balancing things." She sighed, misinterpreting my calm for forgiveness. "You've always been the responsible one. He just needs a little help." I didn't respond. People like Leo depend on that exact sentence. The idea that someone else will clean the mess, quietly, gracefully, out of love. That night, I checked my email again and saw the notification from the bank. Fraud review complete. Access activity attached. I opened the document and scanned the data. Timestamps, device IDs, login histories. One address repeated across dozens of entries. I copied it and ran a quick location check. The map zoomed in on a familiar suburb, his. The apartment I'd helped him rent 2 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had paid for the walls that protected his deceit. The following day, I took the file to a notary. The office smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant. The clerk, an older man with silver glasses, looked at the documents, his brow lifting slightly. "You're building a case," he said. "I'm building proof," I corrected gently. He told me to prove it. He nodded approvingly and stamped the first page with a heavy thud that seemed to echo longer than it should have. It was the sound of something shifting, an invisible balance realigning itself. That evening, Leo texted me for the first time since our last call. "You still mad? It's not that serious." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "You'll understand how serious it is soon enough." He didn't respond. I imagined his smirk, his half-hearted shrug, his assumption that I wouldn't dare make it public. He was counting on my silence, the same silence I had perfected for years. But silence, I was learning, can be a weapon if you know when to break it. Over the next few days, I collected more. Bank statements, text screenshots, copies of old messages where he'd mentioned borrowing small amounts. Individually, they were harmless. Together, they told a story even he couldn't deny. Each document was a thread, and I was weaving them into a net. By Friday, the evidence folder was complete. I looked at the final page, a notarized statement verifying that all transactions originated from his IP address, using a device registered in his name. The numbers aligned perfectly. It was clean, unambiguous, impossible to twist. That night, I placed the folder on the dining table, next to my phone. I looked at the clock, 11:30 p.m. It was quiet outside. The kind of silence that waits. My hand hovered over the call button, but I didn't press it yet. Timing mattered. The truth had to arrive when its audience was widest. Tomorrow, our family group call was scheduled, our weekly ritual. A tradition of forced cheer and polite updates. He would be there. So would my parents. It would be the perfect stage. As I turned off the lights, the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the dark again. Same sound, different weight. This time I didn't feel small inside it. Prove it, he had said. I smiled into the darkness. I will. The next evening I sat at the table with the folder open in front of me. The lamp cast a small, focused circle of light, just enough to make the papers glow against the dark. Every piece of proof was there. Dates, signatures, digital trails, and the cold precision of numbers that didn't lie. My phone rested beside them, screen dark, waiting. At 11:47 p.m., the family group call began, right on time. My mother's voice came first, cheerful and unaware. There you are, finally. I was beginning to think you'd both forgotten. I'm here, I said, my tone calm, even. My brother joined a moment later, his voice smooth, casual. Hey, everyone. Sorry, I was finishing something up. He always sounded believable, even when he was lying. That was his skill, truth delivered with warmth. My father asked about work, about the house, about nothing that mattered. I listened, half present, waiting for the right silence to open. Finally, my mother sighed softly. You two need to talk, she said. This tension isn't good. Family is all we have, Leo chuckled. I told her that, Mom. She's been in detective mode lately. Detective mode, I repeated quietly. That's one way to describe it. He laughed again, lighter now, encouraged by their confusion. She thinks I took her money, he said. Imagine that. Her own brother. The words lingered, soft but sharp. I could almost hear his smile through the line. My mother gasped. Leo, is that true? Of course not, he said smoothly. She's overreacting. I told her she needs to prove it. I exhaled slowly. You're right, I said, my voice measured. You did say that. The silence that followed was small but heavy, the kind that waits for the air to break. I reached for my phone and tapped the speaker icon. The soft click echoed through the room. You're on speaker, Leo, I said. And so is the bank. What? His voice faltered slightly. I nodded toward the open laptop, where the bank representative's voice came through clear and formal. Good evening, Ms. Bennett. We've reviewed your case. The transactions you flagged were verified as unauthorized. The IP address linked to those transfers matches an account registered under the name Leonard Bennett. We'll be forwarding the full report to our fraud department for restitution processing. My mother inhaled sharply. Leonard? He went quiet. The only sound on the call was his breath, fast, uneven, trapped. My father spoke next, low and stunned. Son, what is she talking about? Dad, listen, it's not what it sounds like, he stammered. I just borrowed it for a bit. I was going to... You borrowed my savings? I interrupted, calm as ever. Without asking? Then lied about it? Then dared me to prove it? His voice broke slightly, desperation leaking through the arrogance. I didn't think you'd take it this far. I didn't think you'd take that much, I said. No one spoke for a while. Even the static on the line seemed to hesitate. My mother whispered something faint. My name, maybe, but I didn't answer. My focus was on him. I asked you 3 times, I said softly. You could have told the truth. You could have apologized. Instead, you made it a game. I was going to pay you back, he insisted, voice cracking now. You're acting like I stole? I finished for him. Yes. That's what it's called when you take something that isn't yours and hope no one notices. He tried to speak again, but my father's voice cut through, sharp and final. Enough. The word landed like a door closing. I could hear the disappointment in his tone, deep and heavy, the kind that doesn't raise its voice because it doesn't need to. My father continued quietly. You will return every cent, tomorrow, and you will not speak to your sister until you've made it right. Dad, do you understand me? There was a pause, long and trembling. Yes, he whispered. I looked at the clock. Midnight now, a full circle. The same minute he used to steal my peace. Now marking the moment I took it back. Thank you for confirming, Mr. Bennett, the bank representative said politely from the line. We'll send the documentation shortly. I ended the call. My parents' voices faded into static as the line disconnected, leaving only silence. My phone screen dimmed, then went black. The house was quiet again. The same walls, the same light, but something in the air had shifted. It wasn't victory I felt, or even relief. It was balance. I gathered the papers, sliding them neatly back into the folder. My hands didn't shake. Every movement was deliberate, calm, final. As I turned off the lamp, I caught my reflection in the dark window, steady, unflinching. For once, I wasn't the one being asked to prove anything. He had told me to find evidence. I had done better. I had made him listen to it. The morning after the call, the world seemed unusually still, as if everything had paused to let the truth settle. My phone sat on the table, the screen black, reflecting only the faint gold of sunrise spilling through the blinds. I hadn't turned it on yet. I didn't need to. The silence it offered was cleaner than any apology he could ever form. When I finally powered it up, the messages came one after another. Notifications from family, from the bank, even from Leo himself. The first was from my mother. He says he's sorry. He didn't realize how serious this was. The next, from the bank, confirmed what I already knew. Restitution in progress. The funds would be restored within 48 hours. The last message was from Leo. Short. Please don't make this public. I stared at the words for a long time. Not sorry, not I was wrong, just fear disguised as regret. People like him weren't afraid of guilt. They were afraid of exposure. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded his message to the bank representative handling my case, attaching it to the official file. Documentation, consistency, truth, preserved in writing. Later that day, the phone rang again. It was my father. His tone was quiet, but it carried a weight I'd never heard from him before. Your brother came by, he said. He tried to explain himself. Said he didn't mean to hurt you. Intent doesn't erase consequence, I said softly. He sighed. No, it doesn't. He's lost his job. Word got out about the investigation. I didn't respond immediately. The image formed in my mind. Leo pacing, trying to charm his way out of accountability the same way he'd always done. But this time there was no one left to believe him. My father continued, He'll have to live with this now. So will we. So will I replied. But at least I'll live with the truth. When the call ended, I felt neither pity nor satisfaction, just clarity. Some lessons come too late, but they still arrive. That evening, the bank sent one final confirmation email. The funds were restored in full. At the bottom of the message was a line written almost mechanically. Case closed. But the case wasn't what stayed with me. It was the sound of that call from the night before. The silence that followed after I'd put him on speaker. The moment when truth had nowhere left to hide. I poured a glass of water and stood by the window, the city lights flickering against the fading sky. For the first time in weeks, I felt no weight in my chest, just stillness. Around 8, my phone buzzed again. Leo. This time he didn't text. He called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Please, he said the moment I picked up, his voice raw, stripped of its usual confidence. Can we talk? We are, I said. I didn't mean for it to get this far, he continued. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. You didn't think, I said. You planned. He didn't argue. Just a pause, long and hollow. Then I'm going to pay you back. All of it. You already did, I replied. You just don't realize what it cost you. I'm your brother, he said, his tone cracking, as if that word still carried weight. I looked out the window again, the night sharp and endless. And I was your sister, I said quietly. The one you thought wouldn't notice. He exhaled shakily. So that's it? You're done with me? No, I said. I'm done protecting you. There was nothing left to add. He said my name once, but I ended the call before he could say it again. For a while, I stood in the dark, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence once more. The same sound that had accompanied every quiet revelation in this house. Only now it no longer felt oppressive. It felt earned. I opened the folder one last time, flipping through the pages. Each one a fragment of the truth I'd carried alone for too long. Proof that I hadn't imagined the betrayal. That I hadn't been paranoid or petty. Proof that belief without boundaries becomes permission. One by one, I fed the documents through the shredder. The soft whir of paper turning to ribbons was almost soothing. Not out of anger, but release. The truth had done its work. It didn't need to linger. When the last page was gone, I sat down, folded my hands, and breathed. The air felt lighter, the space wider. I realized then that justice doesn't always end with confrontation. Sometimes it ends with restoration, of balance, of self, of peace. The next day, I received one final message from Leo. "I'm leaving town for a while. I'll send the rest soon." I didn't reply. Some conversations end not because they've run out of words, but because the truth has already been spoken. I closed my phone, stepped outside, and let the wind move through my hair. The world looked the same, but it felt different. Open, unburdened, mine again. He had asked me to prove it. And I had, live in real time for everyone to hear. The days that followed unfolded with a quietness I hadn't known in years. There were no more calls, no messages, no explanations trying to rearrange the truth into something softer. Just silence, clean and final. I woke earlier now, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The mornings carried a still kind of freedom, the kind that follows when a storm has taken everything that didn't belong to you. The money was back in my account within the promised 48 hours. The bank statement confirmed it. Restored funds, reversed charges, balance corrected. But what I felt wasn't satisfaction. It was something deeper, steadier, like balance returning to a scale that had long been tilted. I stared at the numbers on the screen and realized they no longer mattered the way they once did. What I'd reclaimed was never just the money. It was my boundary, my peace. I spent the next few days clearing the house, not in haste but with deliberate care. Every drawer I opened revealed small ghosts. Old birthday cards signed by both of us. Photos from a time before resentment took root. Even a letter he'd written years ago when he needed help. "You're the only one who believes in me," it said. I folded it once and placed it in a box labeled past. Some memories deserve respect, even if the people attached to them don't. By the end of the week, I called my mother. She sounded older somehow, her voice thinner around the edges. "He's gone," she said. "Packed up and left. Didn't say where." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "He'll surface when he's ready," I said. "You're not angry with him?" I thought about it for a moment. Anger was heavy and I had no space left for it. "No," I said finally. "Anger keeps you tied to the moment you were wronged. I'd rather let it go." She was quiet, then sighed softly. "You've always been stronger than he knew." "Stronger than I knew too," I said, and for the first time it felt true. After the call, I sat on the porch as the afternoon light faded into amber. The street outside was calm, the kind of suburban stillness where even the air seemed to hum at half speed. A neighbor watered her plants across the street. Somewhere a dog barked, distant but familiar. Life continued, unbothered by the quiet revelations happening behind closed doors. I took my phone from the table beside me and scrolled through the old call logs. His name appeared more times than I expected. So many small conversations, so many chances for truth. I selected them all and pressed delete. The screen went blank. The world didn't end. That night I poured myself a glass of wine, not to celebrate, but to mark a moment. I sat by the window, the soft reflection of city lights flickering across the glass. I remembered his voice from that night on speakerphone, the panic, the unraveling certainty, the moment denial turned into silence. There was no triumph in remembering it, only clarity. Some people break the very trust they depend on, forgetting that betrayal always returns in echoes. The next morning, I went for a walk by the river. The air was cool, touched with salt and rain. The water moved slowly, steady and certain, like time itself had learned patience. I stopped by the railing and watched sunlight glint across the surface. I thought about what my father had said, about consequences, about living with what we create. He was right. Justice wasn't punishment. It was reflection, and sometimes reflection hurt most when it was quiet. I reached into my pocket and took out the old USB drive I'd used to store the evidence. Its metal surface was cold against my skin, faintly scratched from use. For a long moment I turned it over between my fingers. Then, without hesitation, I tossed it into the river. It sank quickly, swallowed by ripples that smoothed over as if nothing had fallen at all. It wasn't erasure, it was release. When I walked back home, the sun was higher, the light warmer. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. I opened the windows wide, letting the breeze move through freely, carrying away the last traces of tension that had lived there too long. On the kitchen table sat the last unopened envelope from the bank. a printed letter confirming the closure of the case. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it said. That evening, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. The words came slow but certain, each one deliberate. I wrote about truth, about balance, about how sometimes justice isn't loud. It's the soft sound of peace returning. When I finished, I set the pen down and looked out at the horizon. The sky was a deep shade of orange fading to blue, the kind of color that promised an ending without demanding one. I whispered into the quiet, not to him, not to anyone, but to myself. It's done. The word lingered, then disappeared into the fading light. I stayed there until the first stars appeared, each one small, precise, and constant, tiny points of proof that even after darkness, something always shines again.